Thank you for watching today. By the way, I am going to refer to my iPad occasionally. As you can see, there's, well, maybe you can't. In the last 4 or 5 days, I've had a lot of things come into my mind which I wanted to talk about, and whether or not I get to them all, we'll just see how time goes. But I think they're all important. By the way, my last video cut short because all my electronic stuff with camera and everything I do is by myself. I've self-taught myself everything, and I have a device that you plug everything into to make the sound go through the camera and everything, and I just completely spaced putting batteries in it. And so the doggone thing ran dead. Well, luckily, pretty much everything that I wanted to talk about was covered. And so when it ended, that was just fine. So, yeah, I keep my glasses up here because I'll constantly be referring to my notes, which I don't do very often. I like to just ad lib and everything, but you know, I don't know. I got a lot of things to talk about today. So I think the first thing I wanted to talk about is this is very, no, it's not just my opinion, it's actual fact. There's a very important aspect of you being able to recognize that you're not going to go, spiritually speaking, very far up the food chain, if you will, meaning your God enlightenment or instructions that go beyond the average seeker of truth. Unless you implore God to help you. Even if you were being instructed by the greatest living guru on the planet, you would fall short of what you need if you're not getting input directly from God. And so in that respect, one thing I have recognized over the past close to 20 years now, and that is, for the most part, it appears that the Eastern philosophies of Hinduism, Buddhism, all of that type spiritual teaching fall short, spiritually speaking, when you are seeking help and guidance from the Creator, God. And they more rely upon the teachings from thousands of years ago, the Sanskrit and the Vedas and Bhagavad Gita and all of this sort of teaching. They rely heavily upon it. Well, sort of like Christianity too, relying on the Bible. So what I'm referring to is, you wouldn't be watching this video if it weren't for the fact that you're seeking beyond what is readily available or available at all anywhere else. Otherwise, why would you listen to me? So you're seeking for something beyond what is available to you under normal circumstances. And in that respect, what I'm telling you is, you need to go to the originator of all truth, God. And you got to seek help from this God. And of course, in my idea, I just say God. I mean, and when I refer to God, I say, well, the God that Jesus prayed to is the God I'm talking about. In Hinduism, it might better be directed toward Vishnu, for instance, would be the God that you might pray to. Of course, you could pray to Brahma. It really doesn't matter, honestly, but you do need additional help from divine sources if you want to escape the confines of what's available in this physical world. Oh, and my point in bringing this whole thing up is the fact that I've said in past videos that you have a lie detector inside of you. It's called your inspiration or your intuition, and that particular intuition, or my particular intuition, tells me that that is missing in Eastern philosophies, in Eastern faiths and teachings. It's for the most part more generalized into a kind of a mechanical type methodology of trying to find the truth, rather than a humble pleading for guidance and direction from this unknown nebulous God. And my intuition tells me it's cold. It just feels cold to me. It's not warm. It isn't. It's lacking the love, the warmth of love. That's what I feel. Of course, that's true in Christianity for the most part too, but not in the people generally. The people that, a lot of people that belong to different Christian faiths, they have that warmth of love. Of course, they don't have any more truth than Hindu teachings, but they do have that. They just have been held in check by their authorities and preachers and everything from seeking guidance from God directly. They've been held in check because that's the way this world is. Okay, number two, what I wanted to talk about is words. So, you know how, and I'm speaking from the perspective of someone that lives in the United States, or someone, let's better put it, someone that lives outside of the influence and teachings of the faiths from the Middle East, China, India, all of these places. So that I'm speaking from a perspective that isn't from there. Obviously, you can tell by my language and voice. But words, just words. Open quote, WORDS, close quote. There seems to be a big emphasis on words. Like you have to pronounce this right, or you have to use this name. And they always give you all of these interpretations from Sanskrit writings. And if you're studying the Bible, they're going back to the Greek writings and trying to, and of course that's all important if you trying to get the perspective of what it was originally trying to say thousands of years ago. But what I'm saying is don't get hung up in the words, because, for instance, God doesn't just speak Hindu. I mean, God speaks the language that Hindus use in India, but God, that's very exact same God, uses English in English-speaking areas. Words don't mean a damn thing, other than they're an indicator for something else. Well, you all know that, but the point I'm saying is don't get so fixated upon the actual words, rather than be fixated upon what does the word direct you for, or what is it trying to teach you. I feel like this is, I'm not doing a very good job of explaining this stuff. But when it comes to words, all I'm saying is just don't get hung up in the words. Learn the words, learn what they mean, but don't be obsessed with them. Rather, it doesn't matter what language it is. If that particular word is important, then search it out, ask God for guidance and direction, and search it out to what it means to you and put that all together. And then once you learn the meaning, that particular word is going to possibly take you 15 minutes to define. It's not just a single word. Does that make sense? It might take you 15 minutes to define what that very single word is. And when I say 15 minutes, I mean 15 minutes defining it to yourself, not someone else. That's what's important. Don't get hung up on the words. Oh boy, what's next? Again, I don't generally teach this way, but I had so many crazy things come across. Anyways, truth. People get hung up on truth. They always talk about truth. Like, well, I got to know the truth of this. What is the truth? The spiritual truth. What is truth? Truth, truth, truth. It always is focused upon this truth. So now in this particular concept, this is one of those things where it would be, I think it should be qualified as spirituality 2.0. This, what I'm going to define about truth right now, should make a paradigm alteration in you personally moving forward for the rest of your life. And that's what I'm talking about right now with the concept of truth. I don't think I need to, I could read it, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to define it. So the way I defined it in my writing is here again, I'm trying to help you have a paradigm shift. So if you were to take a hammer, and everybody knows what a hammer is, you hammer nails and stuff like that. If you were to take a hammer, and let's call the hammer God, okay? The creator of all things, Brahma, Vishnu, whatever, it doesn't matter. But let's call the hammer God, okay? What is truth? So what are the attributes of a hammer? And you could say, well, a hammer is hard. The substance, it's made out of steel, or at least this particular hammer is made out of steel. So you could say it's very hard, okay? So hard would be a definition of a hammer. So hard would qualify as truth. And what's another attribute of a hammer? Well, it is heavy, okay? Heavy as compared to what? Well, just heavy as compared when it's in your hand. Okay, well, then heavy is an attribute and heavy is truth. What other attributes are there of a hammer? Well, a hammer has got a handle on it so that you can hold it and operate it. So holding it and operating it would be qualified as truth. So when people talk about truth, you have to take two things into context. You have to have these two things. You have to have the hammer, and then what does the hammer represent and do? Because everything that is about the hammer is truth. So if you replace the hammer as God, then everything, all the attributes of God are truth. I am not going to go into non-duality bullshit, because if you did that, then the morons that believe, and I shouldn't speak so harshly of non-duality. I do, because I try to make a point, because there are so many demonic forces in this world that interject non-duality into the discussion so that they can pervert the truth. Does that make sense? So when you introduce non-duality, what they're doing is they're extricating truth away from God and instead supplanting it with themselves or Satan or this or that. No matter what it is, it's always truth in non-duality, because according to them, non-duality, everything is God, and so therefore everything is truth. That's not true. That's a demonic teaching it's a perversion of the truth, because the truth is God. All the attributes of God are truth. So now let's look at a different way of looking at it. Let's say your God that you worship happens to be Satan, okay? So now all the attributes of Satan are truth, and the attributes, and some of the attributes, not all, but some of the attributes of Vishnu are not truth, because what you have supplanted, or what you have put as your God, is now what defines truth. Does that make sense? I think I'm probably a terrible teacher, but at least I'm a teacher. That's better than not being a teacher. I hope I'm making myself clear there, because that's like super, super important. You can't know what the truth is if you don't visualize what God represents, because there is no truth without God. Now, according to Jesus, we're all gods. And according to me, we're all gods. So now let's take that one step further. Assuming that you are a God, now all the attributes of you represent truth. But you are embryonic, and you are learning, you are developing, you are growing. So your truth changes as you become more aware, more enlightened, more this, more that. So when you are done, so to say, when nobody's ever done, but when you become one with God, your truth and God's truth will be the exact same. And that is why you become one with God, because your truth and God's truth is exactly the same. Does that make sense? Okay, this next term, or this next concept, is Brahman, B-R-A-H-M-A-N. I am going to say that the concept or teaching of Brahman, B-R-A-H-M-A-N, in all reality, this is just my opinion, should not be discussed from a point of view that you are going, well, this is, regardless of what you read, this is the what is Brahman, or this is what the attributes of Brahman are, or whatever. I don't think you should take a stance on what Brahman is unless you're fully enlightened. And up until that point, discussing Brahman is like, well, I'm on the process of learning what Brahman is. The only reason I say that is it's just advice. That's all it is. And the reason I say that is because if you make a hard and fast concept of what Brahman is, it is going to hold you back. It 100% guarantee will hold you back from becoming enlightened. And the reason is because the concept of Brahman cannot be understood unless you have actually gone beyond enlightenment, like enlightened like Buddha. You're not going to understand what the concept or nature of Brahman is. As I've said in the past, Brahman would be better referred to as, and this isn't accurate, but it would be better referred to as an it. For instance, like, or even better yet, say Brahman is big, B-I-G, big. Well, big as compared to what? Yeah, it's just big. Are you going to worship big? No, of course not. Is big better than a hamburger? Well, big is just big. I mean, it doesn't define anything. It's just big. So that is the best thing I could do to define Brahman to someone that isn't enlightened yet. Because if you fixate upon that and think that Brahman is a god, or Brahman is anything that has intelligence or has awareness or anything like that, you would be mistaken. Because Brahman is not aware. Brahman is not sentient. Brahman is not a individual. Brahman is just a word that is attempting to define everything in existence, including Vishnu, God, Brahma, you, your essence. Everything emanates from Brahman, and yet Brahman is nothing. Brahman is... I've said this before in one of my videos. We think that we can move around. Like I say, well, God shined his light, meaning his love, into the darkness of Brahman, and those that responded to that love awakened and exited Brahman to be into the creation or reality of Brahma, God, Vishnu. But you never left Brahman. You didn't move. There cannot be movement within a reality of nothing. Maybe one of these, I'll expand upon that concept with my brother Gordon when he gets here 3 weeks from now, I'm thinking. Somewhere in there, he's going to visit. Anyways, so do not pay any respect, do not respectfully pay homage to Brahman. Brahman doesn't deserve any respect, because if you give respect to a nothing, then it's going to sidetrack you. I know that's clear as mud, and I'm sorry for it, but that's the best I can do at this point. Now the next one is Dharma. The gurus teach about Dharma, the Dharma of this, the Dharma of that. And that's getting back to exactly what I said about truth. In other words, Dharma is misunderstood by everyone that teaches it, because they think, or the way they teach it is, it's an eternal truth, an eternal aspect that they even mistakenly assume that Vishnu works within the confines of Dharma rather than the other way around. It's like the hammer, and what are the attributes of a hammer? Well, truth. So again, what are the attributes of God? Dharma. So Dharma isn't something that God must comply with. Dharma is just defining the nature of God. God doesn't have to confine him or herself to the nature of Dharma. Rather, Dharma is what comes from God. If God were to change and be something else, well, then Dharma would change. And of course they teach, well, Dharma can never change. It is what it is. Well, Dharma is just a definition of God. So you could get back and say, well, if God were to change, Dharma would change. So again, this is a misunderstanding, and it is a corrupt mental thinking of what Dharma is. Rather than, again, because I said in Hinduism, they don't focus upon the warmth of love of God. Rather, they focus upon the technical aspects of God, and they miss the whole point. And again, missing the whole point of Dharma is because Dharma is a definition of God, not the other way around. Okay, I got two more things I wanted to talk about. All these things, by the way, are designed, what I'm teaching or what I'm trying to convey is all like 2.0. Everything I'm trying to convey to you today is just a way to help you think differently, because you have to be able to, no, you're going to have to think differently for you to become enlightened. You just have to, because we've been conditioned for thousands and thousands of years to be what we are, to think the way we are. And you need to break that cycle. It's like talking about the cycle of samsara and stuff. To break that cycle, you need to think differently. And so that's what I'm talking about today. Moksha, M-O-K-S-H-A. So here's another way of thinking about it. Moksha, the way they define it is the cessation of the flame. Moksha is the end of samsara. And again, it is not defined correctly, because it's defined as if, let's say there was let's just define it this way. A spiritual master is focused upon the concept of moksha and does everything that this individual can so that they eventually attain moksha. But it's the other way around. You can focus upon moksha, of course, and as an enlightened master, they can focus upon it. But it's never going to happen if they focus upon it. Rather, what happens is an enlightened master focuses upon themselves, the essence of themselves. And the essence of themselves might be love, for instance. So they focus upon the love, or they depend upon the love of themselves by helping others to do this or to do that, or to teach, or to help people become enlightened, or just help people, or to whatever it is the essence of that individual is, drives them to do what they do. And of course, that might drive them to seek after God, to find the nature of God and to get closer to God. And then, let's say they become, in their situation, the wheel of samsara is over for them. And in retrospect, people can look back and say, well, that person lived let's take Jesus, for instance. We could say, well, Jesus never incarnated again. He's accomplished moksha. Well, but the reality is, moksha is a definition of the individual of Jesus, or anyone that has ever had that take place in their life, meaning moksha. It's because it was them, not the other way around. If you focus upon moksha, you will never experience moksha. But if you focus upon the love and what you do and what you, and then you die and you experience moksha, it isn't because you focused upon it, it's entirely because that is the result of what happens when a person follows a path of love, like God. I don't know if I made that clear, but it's actually quite important that your understanding and your thinking has a paradigm shift. It's really important for that to happen, for you to go on to your next level of spiritual growth. It's very important that you change the way you think about concepts like that, because it's so easy to get focused upon things rather than focus upon yourself. Don't worry about moksha. Don't worry about this. Don't worry about that. Don't even worry about God. Just worry about, don't even worry. Just manifest what is in you. And if what is in you is love, and you seek after God because you love God, and if you seek to help other people because you love them, then moksha, then enlightenment, then this, then that. All these things take place because you focused upon what is inside of you, rather than on the attributes of what other people define. The very last thing, I'm glad I got through all of this. The very last thing I wanted to talk about is kind of, it's less spiritual and more having to do with the world, but it's spiritual too. So think about this. I think this is true, but just because I think it's true doesn't mean it's true, but I think it's true. And because I think it's true, I'm going to use it as an example because I can't come up with any other way to define this concept. Control. Control. The word control. The concept of control. Think about the history of this planet Earth. Think about how, all science, everybody explains that there's this exponential parabola curve of science and development and all of these things. And for thousands and thousands of years, let's say since the last yuga, let's say it's been almost 12,000 years, okay? So we go along as cave people, and then we invent the wheel, and then 10,000 years go by, and the best we can come up with is about the time of Jesus. And so we're still dealing with horses and buggies and all of this sort of thing. And then after, say, 11,700 years go by, now you see this exponential rise that is just incredible, because just literally 300 years ago, it was like We were living in the dark ages, so to say, technologically speaking, and everything, as well as spiritually speaking, from a standpoint of the masses. Okay, but what changed all of that? What changed it all was in the United States. They've got the Christopher Columbus scenario that took place 500 years ago and stuff like that, and then you had a country, the United States, that developed without tight controls. In other words, it was not controlled by kings and queens and dictators and rulers and all of that kind of stuff. Because of freedom, there was an exponential rise in development. And that exponential rise was shared. When I say shared, it's just because it's not like they shared their technology. It's just that that's the way development takes place. So in the United States and in other places also that it started to experience freedom because they went out and killed all the rulers and the kings and queens and cut their heads off and everything else. They were I won't say given, they took their freedoms back, and things just exploded with technological growth and everything. People were not held back anymore. This holds true in spiritual studies also. As soon as you get outside the tight confines of the Christian dogma churches that hold you back, or any kinds of faiths or anything that hold you back. And I suspect that would be why the faith, the expanded faiths, if you will, of Hinduism has always been more advanced than all the other religions of the world and teachings. And why? Because in Hinduism, it has always been free. There never has, as far as I'm aware, there never has been this overriding power. There's no one in control of Hinduism. Sanatana Dharma, you can call it too. There's no one in control. Each individual, a guru or whatever that is inspired or enlightened or whatever, has the freedom to teach whatever it is they feel inspired to teach. And if other people want to follow, well, then that's their prerogative. But there's no overriding control placed upon them. And so it has always been advanced. Unfortunately, they haven't included God as closely as they should have, meaning the love of God. And that's why they haven't exceeded beyond where, the ceiling of what their enlightenment is and such. So, and then of course, probably starting 50 years ago in the United States, we started getting controls placed back upon us and all these laws and rules and everything else. And that's why the advances have pretty much been crippled throughout the world. I'm sure they've invented computers and stuff like that, but in reality, mankind has been held back quite extensively over the last 50, 60 years because of all the governmental controls and corporate controls, and it's like a dictatorship, essentially. So I guess what I'm trying to say is the concept of control is what is holding back mankind in every possible way known to mankind. Because those people that are in power don't give a damn about the things that you care about. They're demonic, okay? All rulers are demonic because they're not doing it to help you. They're doing it because of their inward need for power and authority, which is satanic, demonic in nature. And I'm not saying that because I hate them. I'm just saying that because it's their nature. It's like when I was talking about what's the nature of a hammer, and that would be truth. What's the nature of God? That's truth. What's the nature of these individuals with control? Well, that would be the stifling of the creation of individual human beings. Otherwise, all these inventions would flourish, but instead, it's all held back. It's like one of the biggest corporations in the world. You take Microsoft, for instance. Well, it started off as a good organization, but then they bought other software developers and destroyed the concepts because they had more power and authority. And so now what do we have? We have a semi-crappy operating system because it hasn't been able to grow over the past probably 30 years, I would guess. 20, 30 years it's been held back because it's more about control than it is about development. And there again, I'm not trying to denigrate the people of Microsoft. I'm just saying that's the corporate controls that are within that system. So I guess that's another way of paradigm thinking. And when you take that to the spiritual concept, controls, dogma, whatever it is, will hold back. And then what I'm teaching, for instance, is imploring or importuning your God for further light and knowledge and everything. I'm saying that the strata, if you will, of the dogma of this world, including myself, by the way, you need to transcend. You need to transcend all of what's available on this planet Earth and go directly to the source to transcend where the limits are on this world. Because, see, I'm limited. My human body limits me from telekinesis, limits me from the ability to do what God does, for instance. So I can't teach you what I know up here. I can talk about it, but you have to go to the source to get it. Does that make sense? Anyways, that is pretty much everything I wanted to talk about today. I think the very, very, very last thing is I hope this video gets made because my PC computer with its crappy operating system of Windows is in the shop right now. And so now for the very first time, I'm actually going to make this video using my Apple Macintosh laptop, actually. So we'll see how that goes. I have never done it. This will be my very first. I played with it a bit in the past, but this will be the very first video that I actually created. So let's keep our fingers crossed and hope that I'm able to get this out. And because I actually would like that, because then I can make videos while I'm on the road, and I do plan on traveling, and I'm not held back with the large PC computer. Anyways, thank you for watching. I love you. I hope and pray that you will become enlightened. I hope and pray that you will find what you're looking for. It's super hard. It is not easy. It may take you decades and decades, but it's worth it. It makes life worth living. So keep walking the path, and I guarantee you, if you integrate God into your conversation and into your path, you will start finding truth that you never thought was available. And I think that the reason Jesus says, go into your closet and pray to God for help. Why? Well, I think because if you did it openly, maybe people would think you're a crackpot, and you don't want people to think you're a crackpot. You want them to think you're just like everyone else, even though you're not. And there's nothing wrong with that. So Seek God in secret. Don't let anyone else know that that's what you're doing. And just keep it to yourself. And then when you get that truth and knowledge, you too will come across as being someone that it's like, well, how did that person find that stuff out? Well, it's kind of personal, so you don't share that stuff. Anyways, thank you for watching. I love you.